Have you noticed we've got a little theme going today? A really good one, eh? I have to give you a disclaimer. It's a disclaimer if you've been here before, and I looked at my calendar. I was actually here this time last year. I gave the same disclaimer whenever I stood before you to preach something about Advent and Christmas, the birthing of the Christ. It's a double disclaimer. One, I don't know nothing about birthing no babies. And two, though I have passed 21 kidney stones in my life experience, I promise not to compare that pain with the pain of labor, because you only make that mistake once in the presence of a woman. I will not do it again. This is one of my favorite times of the year, not necessarily the Christmas season, but the Advent season. Advent is special to me because I have done a study on Advent in recent years and come into a greater awareness of not only what this season is about, but what happens in this and all seasons that prepare me for what is about to be birthed. What's about to be birthed in the new year, in the new season of my life, in the new season of our worldly experience on this planet. Advent has been enjoyed and celebrated for centuries in many different ways. And in traditional Christianity, it is the commemoration of the birth of Jesus, the Christ child, over 2,000 years ago, an external historical event. And yet, metaphysically, we understand that Advent is a different approach to how we can birth something within us. It's a spiritual journey in consciousness, and it's a journey to our wholeness. I think that Advent can best be described as a time to stop, to rest, to be still, and to pay attention. And what comes up for us in the church setting is that we take the 4 weeks prior to Christmas and we look at different concepts. Each week has a different word or concept in which we talk about. The first week is usually one that we speak of faith and hope. Hope being the precursor to our faith. Faith being what we believe in at soul level, that we believe in without a shadow of a doubt. I believe wholeheartedly that the sun will rise in the morning, so much so I don't even think about it anymore. But what else do we believe in at such depth? We also talk about love. I think Sue talked about that last week. And coming into a new understanding of what love is. I told first service this morning, we use that word interchangeably in our language, and we have used it so much that it has lost its meaning. I told Dee, I love your outfit and I love your necklace. The truth is, I'm just not that attached to her necklace, that I love it so much. Love takes on a different awareness when we come back to the knowing that love is who and what we are, that we are the very nature of that Christ or God presence. And then, of course, we come to what we're going to be talking about today, peace. And I'm going to invite you to look at what your definition is of peace. And will you set your definition aside and allow a new, deeper understanding of what peace is to come and be part of your experience in this season? And then, of course, that last Sunday or last week, right before Christmas and including Christmas Day, is the concept of joy, of coming into that awareness and allowing it to be birthed, not from a place of fear and anxiety, but one from expectation. Advent, in its root meaning in the Latin, means something is coming. And as we think about what is coming for each of us individually, it's going to be different. If you asked your neighbor, what's coming for you in the next year? Think about what it is for you and how you are preparing for it. You know, as we prepare for that and we give birth to that, it is what Christmas Day is all about. The birth of the Christ child. Having completed our Advent preparations, we celebrate the arrival or the coming of something that we may not quite understand from our personal perspective right here, right now. We'd like to think we do, but things take on a whole different direction because guess what? We're not in control. Have you noticed? Control is the greatest illusion of our life experience. And interestingly enough, it's the Christmas story that we have lost control about. I shared in first service some historical moments that have been passed down through generations, through traditions, through theology about the Christmas story that have taken different twists and turns and detours until we arrive today with a lot of things that probably didn't quite happen. The understanding that we celebrate the birth or Christmas in December is so far removed from the truth because when you think about what the Christmas story was in the Gospels, they were traveling to a foreign land to pay their taxes, to have a census taken, but they would not have done that in the middle of winter. The government wanted their money. They wanted to know who was coming and how many, so they weren't going to make it that difficult. Historians believe that the birth of Jesus and the time of the tax and census season was either in June or September, when it was comfortable to travel. And speaking of travel, it's also interesting to note that when we envision in our mind Mary and Joseph traveling, and Mary being very pregnant at the time, on the back of a donkey through the desert and through rocky terrain, did that really happen? We don't know. But what we do understand and what we do know is that this very young pregnant woman would probably not be doing so by herself. She would probably be escorted by friends, by family. And the reason for that is when we see them in our mind's eye going across those rocky and dangerous even terrains, we see them as very poor people. But the truth is, poor people were not taxed. Poor people didn't have money to pay tax. Poor people were not considered the upper echelon of which they would be counted. It was only the abundant and prosperous that were called forth at the time of tax and census. So, whole different concept of who Mary and Joseph were, right? That they were rich, that they were abundant. And it's also interesting to note that when they arrived and you heard those words over and over, there's no room in the inn. In all of the Gospels that talk about the Christmas story or the birth story, there was no mention of a stable. But what do you see in the nativity scene that sits on your cabinet? What do you see? You see this whole beautiful stable, a manger, which was mentioned in the Gospels, an angel, shepherds, sheep. Sometimes there's a camel out of nowhere. And interestingly enough, all of these characters, if you will, were probably not there at the time of the birth. 3 particular characters in your nativity scene, I can guarantee, were not there at the time of birth, and those were the 3 wise men. Truth be told, there were way more than 3 wise men. What wise men meant historically were the kings of other nations. It wasn't that they were smart, it was that they were leaders. They were the kings and queens of distant lands. And they chose to travel to give their gifts, their love, their adoration to this Christ child. But to do so, they had to prepare for that journey. Many of them crossed over land and sea, and it would have taken months and years for them to arrive. But before that, they had to spend months and maybe even up to a year to prepare for that journey. They didn't just jump on the back of a donkey and ride across the land. These were kings and queens. They had to prepare their court. They had to prepare all the food that it would take to sustain all of their travels for months, if not a year. They had to have a security detail, because you see in the nativity scene, when there is a wise man or a king offering a gift, it fits in a hand. But the truth is, the gifts that they brought were so large, so abundant, that it wasn't a bar of gold, it was a chest of gold. It wasn't an herb, it was hordes of herbs, of frankincense, of myrrh. And so all of the detail that it took to prepare for that journey took months. And then they traveled for months or years. Most theologians today understand that the first king or wise men didn't arrive until Jesus was 2 years old. The last of the 12 kings probably didn't arrive until he was between 7 and 9 years of age. When you think about that, I want you to see that in your mind's eye. Here's Jesus, little boy Jesus, playing stickball with his neighbor kids out in the street. And over the horizon comes this envoy of flags, of trumpets, of kings and queens being carried. Think about that. And they brought their gifts. They had traveled thousands of miles, some of them. They had lost many of their loved ones. They had lost servants. They had lost animals. And they finally arrived soaked in sweat. They had no, little motels they could stop and take a shower. Dusty. And they knelt there with their gifts to this little boy who was, I'm sure, wide-eyed, wondering, who are you and why are you here? And they offered their gift. And can't you just hear that wise man say, just be sure to know this is both for your birthday and for Christmas. And so the story of Christmas continues to evolve, right? For thousands of years, humanity has believed in this concept of preparing, and we have given it different names. And one of the names that we in New Thought understand as the best kind of preparation is prayer and meditation. Our fourth unity principle of understanding that it is not preparing just our conditions or our environment outside of us, but preparing our spirit, our mind, our heart within us. And while we are preparing or praying, there's a lot of waiting that goes on. Have you waited much in your life experience? Is it very much fun? Not so much. Especially in this time, in this day and age, we are not real good at waiting. We want everything instantaneous. I think I spend more time going between my microwave and the trash can where I just threw the box for my lean cuisine into to say, why is this 2 minutes seeming like 15, right? Am I sure that I only hit it 2? We want things like this. We have a dear friend, Reverend Paulette Pipe. Many of you know her. She has a great radio show on Unity Online Radio. Paulette and I were together last week. We both we recorded 2 shows. And Paulette is a master meditator and facilitator of meditation retreats all over the globe. And as we were recording our shows and I got to sit in her presence, she asked me on air about my meditation practice. I know Paulette's meditation practice. It goes on for hours, undisturbed, calm, and present. And she asked me, how's yours? And I said, you know what, Paulette? It's really good because that 45-minute meditation, I nailed it in 10. Instantaneous. But it's in that time of waiting that we learn. Think about what you learn when you wait. Whether you're waiting in the doctor's office, when you're waiting on your tires to be rotated, what are you learning? What are you observing? I think we learn a lot of humility, a lot of humbleness, a lot of compassion, non-resistance, patience, sometimes acceptance. And it is the waiting that really humbles us, isn't it? Why do you think it humbles us? I noticed recently whenever I went to my optometrist, I waited in the waiting room for longer than I thought I would have to. And it was a humbling experience because I so wanted to jump up and go through those doors and say, you know, I was here on time and I have a place to be and my time is valuable. I didn't have that power. And that's what waiting does. It humbles us. It comes back to that awareness that we have a sense of powerlessness in waiting, but we also have choice about what we're going to do with it. Waiting humbles us, and it opens us to different powers or different methods that we may not fully grasp or understand from our human perspective. Eventually, we are distracted. I want you to think about a time years ago. I almost went into the Star Wars mode there. It was a distant time, a distant space. It was when airplanes would come and you could meet your loved one at the gate. Remember that? Can't do that anymore. But remember going to the gate and being so excited, and you would wait on that plane to land, and you were just so adventurous in your thinking about who it was and what you were going to experience, what you were going to feel. And then as you were waiting, something over here happened that took you off guard or just took your attention, and you were watching another reunion of someone else getting off a different concourse exit. And you were watching that reunion, and you were distracted from your own. There's nothing wrong with that, but you came back and you waited. And I noticed not long ago in the Atlanta airport, as I was waiting on my plane, I was standing there waiting patiently. And just out of nowhere comes this security officer on a Segway. You know what a Segway is, the two-wheeler thing? Out of nowhere, he just comes and glides by me after somebody. So here I am waiting on my plane, and all of a sudden, I'm just wanting to know where he's going, what he's doing. How much does that thing cost? Could I ride that? Does he really need that helmet? All kinds of things going through my mind. And so you think about what it is about that patience within us, that persistent focus that can be so easily persuaded otherwise. But in that distraction, I'm not calling it a bad thing. Let's not judge it. Let's just see it for what it is for a moment. Because it is our momentary lack of focus in that moment on that concourse exit. It did not mean that you were wanting to see your friend any less. It just meant your attention went elsewhere. It didn't mean that that joy wouldn't come. It just meant your attention went elsewhere, but you could come back to it. And that's what prayer and meditation is all about for us. It's a way of noticing. She just sang about it. She's going to sing about it again in a few minutes. When our mind gets distracted, prayer and meditation is what brings us back to center. And whatever your prayer and meditation practice is, it matters not. I grew up in a very, most of you know this about me, a very stringent, religious, conservative understanding of prayer. One of my first times in silent unity, I saw on the wall a definition of prayer that changed my whole prayer life. It said that prayer is any conscious attempt to experience the divine. Any conscious attempt to experience the divine. I love that definition. And here's the rub in that. I have to be conscious, and then attempt, and then the experience presents itself, and then the divine is made known. Which means, when I am distracted, am I conscious to what's happening here? We have to get into the understanding of what is our heart's desire. Jesus spoke of it when he prayed those affirmative prayers, because it is an activity that allows us to know our oneness, that allows us to know the presence of that divine spirit within us, around us, that is always moving through us. And so prayer is not a technique for changing or persuading God, but rather it's for expanding and transforming us, our minds, changing us at soul level. Affirmations and denials are the techniques in which we use our prayer to support that law of mind action, and that's what helps us redirect our attention and our focus from thoughts that are mistaken, beliefs that maybe we don't believe at depth, that we only think we believe. We have free will. We can change our mind. We can believe something different, this or greater than. So I want you to think about the waiting game for just a moment. I want you to think about Advent and what you are preparing, whether it's this new season in your life, next year, whatever is being birthed in you, and then ask why. Why would I go through all of this preparation? The answer is really quite simple. It's because we believe that the moment is coming. In the Latin, what Advent means is coming. That's what it means. Something is coming. And we believe, we have faith and hope, and we love to the degree that we understand that that coming is significant. And it is our becoming that moves us. But have you noticed that anytime something in life is about to be made new, something is about to change, that all the preparation that you've ever done to prepare for that falls apart at the last minute? Anyone experience that? The chaos and the confusion of that last day or week right before the Thanksgiving meal comes to be, forgot to thaw out the turkey. I mean, whatever it is, there's something that just falls apart. That's where peace comes in. That's where prayer and meditation remind us, let's get centered and focused again, not because peace is outside of us, but because it's within us. And I can deal with this confusion and chaos from a place of peace, rather than meeting that vibration of confusion and chaos and just making it expand and multiply. In his book, Discovering the Power of Now, Eric Butterworth tells a story. And he was going to a newsstand every morning to get his paper, and he would meet the same gentleman there. The same man selling the papers was there. And he would pay for his paper and take it with him, and he noticed that this man would come, and we kind of guess from the way he tells the story that this gentleman was from a different nation, maybe a different color than many of us. And the guy who was selling the paper to him was not very nice. He was actually quite rude. And day after day after day after day, there was this rudeness, this vibration that came forth. And yet that man always said thank you. He always paid and said good morning. And Eric couldn't stand it any longer one day, and he said, I just got to ask you, why do you continue to be nice when that vendor continues to be so rude to you? And the man said, why should I let him steal my peace? Why should I let him take my joy? I think that's a question that we could ask more often of ourselves. Why do we think these conditions outside of us have anything to do with within us, that peace that we know past our own understanding? We sang just a few minutes ago one of my favorite hymns, Christmas carols, O come, Emmanuel. And what that means metaphysically takes on a whole different perspective when you know it. O come, Emmanuel. Emmanuel being the name of that Christ child, which means in the Greek, God with us, or God within us. And so, one of the phrases in that song says, and ransom captive Israel. Israel metaphysically means the Prince of Peace, or the Prince of God that is within us. And the understanding that our negative thoughts, our distractions, our beliefs that are anything other than the highest and best are often held captive in our mind. But they have been ransomed through a power and a presence of peace if we can come into the understanding that we don't have to work for it, that we don't have to pay a price for it, that it already exists. There's a quote by Albert Einstein that says, peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. I love that. It's the understanding, the awareness that when we sing songs like this, there's something behind those lyrics. One of the lyrics in that song that says, that mourns in lonely exile here, is what Eric saw whenever he saw that man. It is our waiting in isolation. It is our mourning of our loss of peace. And yet, again, that ransom has already been paid. And so as we think about what that means for us today, I want to share with you something that John F. Kennedy once said. Peace is a daily, a weekly, a monthly process, gradually changing opinions, slowly eroding old barriers, quietly building new structures. Peace does not rest in the charters and the covenants alone. It lies in the hearts and minds of all people, of all nations. So let us not rest all of our hope on parchment and on paper, but let us strive to build peace, a desire for peace, a willingness to work for peace. And let us understand that it is our hearts and minds, and that we can believe the problems of human destiny are not beyond the reach of human understanding. Isn't that amazing? I love that. He goes on to say, I speak of peace, therefore, as the necessary rational end of a rational mind. I realize the pursuit of peace is not as dramatic as the pursuit of war, but we have no more urgent a task. Yeah, that's huge, isn't it? In Luke, the 3rd chapter, it says, it is written in the book of Isaiah the prophet that there is a voice of one who cries out in the wilderness, prepare the way. Prepare the way for the Lord. I'm going to ask you, what are you preparing? What is the way of the coming? What is the way of what is being birthed? What are you preparing? I'm going to give you a hint. Whatever you're thinking about and whatever you're feeling is your preparation plan. If you are worrying, you are preparing. If you're stressing out, you're preparing. And the same rule applies. If you are appreciating, you are preparing. If you are in harmony and peace, you are preparing. So, my grandmother, who was all of 4'9", once told me, you can worry all you want today, just know that you're going to do it twice, now and right before that event happens. So where's your energy? There is a lot of distraction that goes on in this season of contrast, isn't there? We find ourselves joyful and excited, and sometimes also wistful and melancholy. We are preoccupied with our shopping, with the parties. We're preoccupied with buying gifts. Regardless of what's happening on the outside is something on the inside, and that is peace. If we can touch that again and move and have our being from that place, our Christmas season will be one of joy. Our next season in life can be one of thanksgiving. You know, every Sunday here at Unity of Springfield, and in almost every Unity church on this planet, there is a song that we sing at the very end of our service. Let there be peace on earth. And the first and the last lines of that song say it all. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Unfortunately, there are 6 other days of our week that we sing a different song. We sing, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with him and her and that situation and that political figure and that resolution and that condition. Because if all those things would calm down, then I could be at peace. If all of the other wars on our planet would calm and be silent, then we would know peace on earth. One of my favorite things that Charles Fillmore ever said was that it is the hope in you, the Christ, the glory, the understanding, that it is always within you. The Dalai Lama says, peace starts with the individual, and peace in the world depends on peace in the hearts of individuals. We cannot enjoy true peace until we dismantle the injustice of our own heart. Peace is more than just the absence of a conflict. It is the presence of a reality beyond the duality of your way or my way. And I think Rumi said it best when he referred to that place as a place beyond right or wrong, a place beyond judgment, a place where we can meet each other. Maya Angelou voiced that again when she said, on this platform of peace, we create a language to translate ourselves to ourselves and others to others. Bukeka is going to come sing a song in just a few minutes. And I want to just take a moment before she does that to sit in a moment of peace, of silence, if you will. I know we've had meditation, but if it feels comfortable to you, will you close your eyes? Remembering that whatever you are thinking about and feeling in this moment, you are preparing for your next. And in this, you have free will and choice to come into a place of peace. Because if we want to see peace in our world, if we want to know peace for those in war-torn countries such as Syria and Afghanistan and Iran, if we want to know peace for people in Pakistan and Argentina and Paraguay, there is peace that can transform us here in Springfield so that it travels all the way around to Bethlehem. Let there be peace, and let it begin with me. Jesus said it when he said, it is the peace that I leave with you, my peace I give to you. May your Advent journey be filled with all of these things, of faith, of hope, of love, of peace, and of joy. And may you know that through the presence of the Christ within you, that which is being birthed, the ransom that is paid for all those captive thoughts held in mind that would suggest anything other than the truth, that there is in this season and all seasons a time of waiting and preparation, a time to be patient, a time to prepare the way in mind, body, and spirit, because in doing so, we come back to that awareness of this quiet place within us, the Bethlehem of our own heart, where we find that Christ's presence, the divine light, inherent and innate. It is a holy place. It is a silent night where all is calm and all is bright. Namaste.